I stood in my doorway, still wearing the apple-patterned apron my daughter Katie had given me for Mother's Day, trying to process what I was seeing. The aroma of my own turkey, the one I'd spent 3 days brining and preparing according to my grandmother's recipe, wafted from the kitchen, mixing with whatever Margaret had brought. "Mom, you didn't have to do this," David said, but I could hear the pleasure in his voice. He'd always loved his mother's cooking, a fact Margaret never let me forget. "Oh, I know, sweetie," she replied, patting his cheek like he was still 12 years old. "But you know me, I just don't trust other people's cooking. Who knows what they might do to the food?" The wooden spoon I was holding nearly snapped in my grip. 15 years. 15 years of comments about my interesting cooking choices. 15 years of her showing up with backup dishes at every family gathering. 15 years of watching my husband light up at her food while picking at mine. Grandma, Katie came bounding down the stairs, her dark curls bouncing. At 13, she was the spitting image of me at that age, something that had always seemed to irritate Margaret. "Did you bring your famous green bean casserole?" "Of course, sweetheart," Margaret beamed. "I know how much you love it, not like that modern version your mother makes with the almonds." I took a deep breath, remembering my therapist's advice about choosing my battles. "The kitchen's pretty full right now," I said, trying to keep my voice low. "Maybe we could set up the extra food in the dining room." "Oh no," Margaret said, already pushing past me toward the kitchen. "Everything needs to stay hot. We'll just move some things around." She paused at the entrance, surveying my carefully prepared feast with a critical eye. "Oh dear, Emily, your turkey looks a bit dry." That was it. That was the moment something inside me snapped. "My turkey," I said slowly, "has been brining for 3 days. I've been up since 5 a.m. basting it every 30 minutes. It is not dry." Margaret's eyebrows shot up. "Well, there's no need to get defensive, dear. I'm just trying to help. David, honey, help me make some space. We can move Emily's turkey to the warming drawer." I watched in disbelief as my husband moved toward my turkey, my perfectly cooked, meticulously prepared turkey, with clear intention to relocate it. "Don't you dare touch that turkey, David Harrison." My voice came out quieter than I expected, but something in my tone made everyone freeze. Even Katie, who had been texting in the corner, looked up. David said, using that placating tone he always adopted when mediating between his mother and me. "Mom's just trying to help. You know how she's about these things." "Yes," I replied, still eerily calm. "I do know how she is. I've known for 15 years exactly how she is, and I've spent 15 years smiling and nodding while she undermines everything I do in my own home." "Now, Emily," Margaret started, but I held up my hand. "I spent 3 days preparing this meal. 3 days planning, shopping, cooking. I made Katie's favorite maple roasted carrots. I made those petit fours you love so much, David. I even made that specific cranberry sauce your mother always talks about, Margaret. The one from her grandmother's recipe that she finally shared last Christmas after making me beg for it for 14 years. Well, Margaret sniffed. If you followed the recipe correctly. I have the original recipe card right here." I cut her off, pulling it from my apron pocket. "The one you gave me has different measurements. I found this one in David's childhood cookbook when we were cleaning out the attic last month." The color drained from Margaret's face. David looked confused, glancing between his mother and the recipe card in my hand. "Mom?" he questioned. "What's she talking about?" But Margaret had already recovered, her face settling into familiar lines of martyred patience. "David, your wife is clearly overwrought. Cooking for the holidays can be so stressful, especially for someone who doesn't do it very often." "I cook every single day," I said, my voice starting to shake. "I pack Katie's lunches. I make your favorite lasagna every Sunday, David. I even catered your brother's engagement party last month, Margaret. Or did you forget the surprisingly edible appetizers everyone kept complimenting?" "Emily." David stepped toward me, his face showing growing annoyance. "You're overreacting. Mom was just trying to be helpful. You know how important family traditions are to her." I looked at my husband of 15 years, really looked at him. He stood there in our kitchen, next to his mother, both of them ready to shove my carefully prepared meal aside for hers. Behind them, Katie watched with wide eyes, her phone forgotten in her hand. "You're right, David," I said quietly. "Family traditions are important. That's why I'm going upstairs to make a phone call." "Emily," he started, but I was already walking away. "Go ahead," I called over my shoulder. Enjoy your mother's dinner. I'm sure it's perfect, just like always. As I climbed the stairs, I could hear Margaret's voice. She's always been so sensitive, David. Remember what happened at Christmas 3 years ago? I closed her bedroom door, pulled out my phone, and dialed a number I should have called years ago. Hi, Dr. Stevens. Yes, I'd like to schedule that consultation we discussed last month. No, not next week. Today? Yes, I understand it's Thanksgiving. Trust me, this can't wait another day. Sometimes a turkey isn't just a turkey. Sometimes it's the last strand of a rope that's been fraying for 15 years. And sometimes walking away is the only way to finally be heard. Dr. Stevens' office was one of the few places open on Thanksgiving evening. As I sat in her familiar gray armchair, I could hear the distant sound of holiday football games from the waiting room TV. The consultation had taken exactly 47 minutes, just long enough for my husband to leave 6 voicemails and my mother-in-law to send 13 text messages. Are you sure about this, Emily? Dr. Stevens asked, her kind eyes studying my face as she handed me the envelope. Once you set this in motion. I'm sure, I said, tucking the envelope into my purse. I should have done this years ago. The drive home felt surreal. Streetlights illuminated empty roads as families gathered around their dinner tables, probably enjoying their turkeys without any drama. My phone buzzed again, David calling for the 7th time. I let it go to voicemail. When I pulled into our driveway, I noticed Margaret's car was gone. Bob's too. Good. This conversation needed to be just family. I found David pacing in the living room. Katie sat curled up in a corner of the couch, still in her Thanksgiving dress, but now wrapped in the quilted blanket my mother had made her. The house smelled like Margaret's cooking, all trace of my 3 days of work erased. Where have you been? David demanded. Mom was upset. She left. On Thanksgiving. How could you embarrass her like that? I set my purse down carefully, taking my time. Katie, sweetheart, could you go up to your room for a few minutes? Dad and I need to talk. Katie looked between us, concern etched on her young face. Are you getting divorced? The question hung in the air like smoke. David's face paled. No, honey, I said softly. But some things need to change. I'll come up soon and we can talk, okay? After Katie disappeared upstairs, I turned to my husband. He stood there in his holiday sweater, the one his mother bought him, of course, looking simultaneously angry and uncertain. I met with Dr. Stevens today, I began. Our marriage counselor? On Thanksgiving? David's voice rose. Emily, this is ridiculous. All this because Mom brought some extra food. I pulled out the envelope. No, David. Not because of extra food. Because of this. Inside were copies of every email, text message, and social media post I'd documented over the past 5 years. Margaret's helpful comments about my parenting. Her subtle digs about my cooking, my clothes, my career. The time she told Katie that some women just aren't natural mothers. The Christmas she announced to the entire family that she was so brave for accepting a daughter-in-law who wasn't quite what she'd hoped for. I've been seeing Dr. Stevens privately for 6 months, I explained, watching his face as he flipped through the pages. She helped me see that what's been happening isn't normal. It's a pattern of emotional abuse. Abuse? David looked up sharply. That's crazy. Mom loves you. She's just traditional. Particular. Read page 4, I said quietly. The text she sent Katie last month. He found it. The message where Margaret told our 13-year-old daughter that she shouldn't end up like her mother, settling for a boring office job instead of being a real homemaker. She wouldn't? David's voice trailed off as he read the message again. She did. And you've been enabling it. Every time you defend her, every time you tell me I'm overreacting, you help her tear me down, piece by piece. David sank onto the couch, still holding the papers. I didn't know. You didn't want to know, I corrected gently. It was easier to keep the peace, to let your mother have her way. But I can't do it anymore, David. Not just for me, but for Katie. I won't let her grow up thinking this is what love looks like. What are you saying? His voice was barely a whisper. I sat beside him, close enough to smell his cologne, the one Margaret bought him for his birthday. I'm saying things need to change. I've booked us into intensive couples counseling with Dr. Stevens. 3 sessions a week for the next month, And your mother needs to understand there will be boundaries. Or I'll take Katie and move into the condo my company keeps for visiting executives. I've already arranged it with my boss. David's head snapped up. You'd leave. To save our marriage, yes. To protect our daughter, in a heartbeat. The silence stretched between us, filled with 15 years of unspoken words. Finally, David reached for his phone. I need to call Mom, he said. My heart sank. Some patterns really never change. Tell her what you need to, I said, standing up. I'll be upstairs with our daughter. But David surprised me. I'm not calling to apologize, he said quietly. I'm calling to tell her things are going to change. That you were right. About everything. I froze halfway to the stairs. Emily? His voice cracked slightly. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I didn't see it sooner. I turned back to look at my husband, seeing for the first time in years the man I've fallen in love with, the one who existed before his mother's influence had overwhelmed our lives. Prove it, I said simply. He nodded, then pressed dial. As I climbed the stairs to talk to Katie, I heard him say words I never thought I'd hear. Mom, we need to talk about how you treat my wife. No, I'm not calling to smooth things over. Things are going to be different from now on. Very different. I found Katie sitting on her bed, hugging her old stuffed penguin. Is everything okay? She asked. I sat beside her, pulling her close. Not yet, honey, but I think it might be soon. Downstairs, I could hear David's voice growing stronger as he finally stood up to his mother. Sometimes the biggest turkeys aren't the ones we cook. 1 month can change everything. December brought more than just holiday decorations to our house. It brought a shift I never thought possible. The intensive counseling sessions with Dr. Stevens weren't easy. There were tears, arguments, and moments when I thought we'd never bridge the gap. But David surprised me. He didn't miss a single session, even rescheduling important client meetings to make it work. I keep thinking about that recipe card, he said during our final session, 2 days before Christmas. The one Mom deliberately changed when she gave it to you. All these years, I thought you just couldn't replicate her cooking. I never considered she might be sabotaging you. Dr. Stevens nodded encouragingly. And how does that make you feel, David? Angry, he admitted, his hand finding mine on the couch between us. Not just at Mom, but at myself. I was so focused on keeping the peace that I missed what was happening to my own family. Margaret, predictably, didn't take the new boundaries well. The first week after Thanksgiving, she showed up unannounced 3 times, each visit armed with containers of food and tears about how ungrateful we were being. But you can't come in, Mom, David said firmly that 3rd time, standing in our doorway while she clutched a casserole dish. We told you, visits need to be planned in advance now. And we're having family dinner. Just the 3 of us. Family dinner? She scoffed, peering past him into the house. With her cooking? David, honey, you don't have to punish yourself to prove a point. I waited for David to cave, to let her in just this once. Instead, he straightened his shoulders. My wife is an excellent cook, Mom. The only reason I ever thought otherwise was because you convinced me to doubt her. That stops now. Goodbye. The look on Margaret's face when the door closed was worth every difficult moment of the past month. Katie adapted to the changes better than any of us expected. One evening, I found her deleting dozens of old text messages from her grandmother. I should have told you what Grandma was saying about you, she said, looking up from her phone with tears in her eyes. I'm sorry, Mom. I pulled her into a hug. None of this was your responsibility, sweetheart. You're the child. You should never have been put in that position. The real test came at Christmas. We decided to host again, but this time with clear rules sent to everyone in advance. Margaret and Bob would be welcome, but there would be no surprise dishes, no criticisms disguised as help, and no undermining comments. And if she can't follow those rules? Katie asked as we decorated the tree. Then she'll leave, David answered before I could, hanging a handmade ornament from Katie's kindergarten days. Christmas is about family, but family means respecting each other. Margaret arrived exactly on time on Christmas Day, looking uncomfortable but determined. Bob gave me an apologetic smile as they entered. He'd always been the quiet witness to his wife's behavior. I brought wine, Margaret said stiffly, holding out a bottle instead of her usual arsenal of food. Just wine. As requested. Thank you, I said, accepting both the bottle and the small olive branch it represented. Dinner will be ready in about an hour. We all watched in tense silence as Margaret took her first bite of my honey-glazed ham. Her fork paused halfway to her mouth, eyes widening slightly. "This is," she started, and I felt David tense beside me. "This is absolutely delicious, Emily. Would you share the recipe?" The silence around the table broke as Katie giggled, probably remembering the great recipe card incident. I smiled, serving more roasted vegetables onto Bob's plate. "Of course," I said, "and I promise to give you the correct measurements." Margaret had the grace to blush. Later, as we cleaned up in the kitchen, Margaret lingered behind while David and Bob took Katie to see the neighborhood Christmas lights. "I've been seeing someone too," she said abruptly, washing a dish with more focus than necessary. "A therapist, I mean. She's helping me understand some things about control and boundaries." I nearly dropped the glass I was drying. That's good, Margaret." "I may never be the mother-in-law you deserve," she continued, her voice wavering slightly. "But I'd like to try to be better. For David, for Katie, for you too." It wasn't a perfect apology, but for Margaret, it was seismic. That night, after everyone had left and Katie was in bed playing with her new video games, David and I sat on the couch, admiring our Christmas tree. "Thank you," he said softly, pulling me closer. "For what?" "For not giving up. For making that call on Thanksgiving. For giving me a chance to fix things." I thought about the past month, the hard conversations, the tears, the slow rebuilding of trust. We fixed things together. I corrected him. "Next Thanksgiving," he said with a small smile, "let's just order pizza." I laughed, snuggling deeper into his embrace. "Deal, but I'm choosing the toppings." Sometimes the best family traditions are the new ones we create together. And sometimes the perfect meal isn't about the food at all. It's about finally being heard, respected, and loved for exactly who you are. Even if you put almonds in your green bean casserole,